The marketplace was loud, filled with the sound of alien voices, strange machines, and traders shouting about their goods. Humans were rare here, and most people stared whenever one appeared. But the mechanic named Daniel had learned to ignore those looks. He came here often buying spare parts for broken ships, cheap wires and things others threw away. It was not an easy life, but it was honest, and he liked fixing things on this day. As Daniel walked past stalls of glowing fruit and metallic weapons, he noticed something unusual. A strange silence followed him, whispers ran behind his back, and merchants avoided his eyes. It felt wrong, almost like the whole marketplace was hiding a secret. Daniel slowed down, his instincts telling him something was not right. Then it happened. A small hand grabbed his wrist. Soft but desperate, he turned and saw a little alien girl, maybe 10 years old in human years. Her big golden eyes were filled with tears, her clothes torn and dusty, her voice shaking as she cried, "Please, human, help us," she begged. "They locked my mother in a cage." Daniel froze, staring down at her. He thought he misheard. But the girl's trembling voice was real. Other aliens nearby turned away quickly. Pretending not to see, no one wanted to get involved. The girl clung to him, refusing to let go. Her thin arms shook as she whispered again, "Please, you are the only one who will listen. Everyone else walks away." Daniel's heart tightened. He had seen suffering before, but this was different. This was a child, desperate, begging him with every drop of strength left in her. He bent down, his voice calm but serious. "Where is your mother?" The girl pointed with a shaking finger toward the edge of the marketplace, past the broken signs and dark alleys where no one liked to go. Her voice cracked. "They keep her in the old warehouse. They say she is dangerous, but she is not. She is my mother. Please, human." Daniel looked around. The other merchants pretended to be busy, but he caught the fear in their eyes. It was not just that they didn't care, they were afraid of whoever locked the mother away. For a moment, Daniel hesitated. It was not his fight. He could walk away, buy his parts, go home, and forget this child. But deep inside, something stirred. A memory of his own mother's voice long ago, telling him, "Never turn away from the helpless." Daniel sighed, then nodded slowly. "All right, kid, show me," he said, his voice steady. Relief washed over the girl's face, and she pulled at his sleeve, leading him quickly through the maze of streets. The crowd faded as they walked, the air turning colder, quieter. Shadows stretched across the walls, broken lamps flickered weakly. Daniel could feel the tension building with each step. The girl whispered as they moved, "No one helps us. They all say my mother is cursed. But she is kind, she never hurt anyone. They just hate us because we are poor." Daniel clenched his jaw. He had heard such excuses before, labels used to justify cruelty. It made him angry, though he kept it hidden from the child. Finally, they reached the warehouse. The building was old. Its walls rusted, windows shattered, and strange smells leaking from inside. The girl stopped, her small body trembling. "She's in there," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. Daniel stepped closer, peering through the crack of a broken door. Inside, in the darkness, he saw the shape of a cage. Iron bars glinted in the dim light, and behind them, a figure sat slumped against the wall, chains heavy around her wrists. The alien woman looked weak, her skin pale, her body thin from hunger. Her head rested against the bars, her eyes half closed even from the distance. Daniel could see she was fading. The child's voice cracked. "That's my mother. Please save her." Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to rush in, but something else caught his eye. Shadows moved in the far corner of the warehouse. 2 alien guards stood there, watching the cage with cruel smiles. They carried weapons, and their eyes glowed in the dark. The girl tugged at him. "We must hurry, before they hurt her again." Daniel swallowed hard, his mind racing. He was just a mechanic, not a soldier. But walking away was no longer an option. This child believed in him, trusted him when no one else would. And deep inside, Daniel knew one thing. If he turned his back now, he would never forgive himself. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "All right, but this won't be easy." The girl looked at him with wide eyes. Hope shining for the first time, Daniel stepped back from the door. His thoughts sharp. He needed a plan. A way to outsmart the guards, for now he would watch, study, and wait for the right moment. The air grew heavy, the silence deeper. Every second felt like a drumbeat before the storm. The child held his hand tightly, her eyes locked on her mother behind the bars, and Daniel, the human mechanic who only came to buy spare parts, realized his life had just changed forever because now he was part of a fight he never asked for. A fight for a mother's freedom, a child's hope, and something bigger than himself. And in the shadows of that warehouse, danger was already waiting. Daniel pressed his back against the wall of the warehouse, his heart pounding. The child's tiny fingers gripped his sleeve tightly, her eyes wide with fear. Inside, the two guards laughed to themselves, their voices echoing in the hollow building. The sound of chains rattling reminded him of why he was here. The girl whispered, "She's been here for days. They don't even give her food sometimes." Her voice cracked with guilt. "I tried to sneak bread once, but they caught me, they hit me." Her hand touched her bruised arm, quickly pulling her sleeve down as if ashamed. Daniel clenched his teeth, anger burning inside. He looked again through the crack. Yes, the cage was real, the suffering was real. The mother was still breathing, but barely. If he waited too long, she might not survive. Still, Daniel had to think carefully. Running in blindly would get him killed, and worse, the child too. He crouched low, speaking softly. "Listen to me, kid. What's your name?" The girl wiped her tears, whispering, "Lyra." "All right, Lyra," Daniel said firmly. "You need to stay quiet and stay close to me no matter what happens, understand?" She nodded quickly. Her golden eyes locked on him with desperate trust. It hit him hard. This child had no one else. No other hope. It was all on him now. Slowly, Daniel pushed the broken door wider and slipped inside. The air was heavy with dust and rust. The floor littered with broken tools and chains. The guards stood near a small fire, one sharpening a blade, the other drinking from a flask. They hadn't noticed him yet. Daniel crouched behind an old crate, his eyes fixed on the cage. The alien mother was slumped on the ground, her breathing shallow. Her wrists were raw from the iron cuffs, and her lips whispered something too faint to hear. Lyra's face tightened in pain when she saw her. The child wanted to run to her mother. But Daniel shook his head sharply, holding her back. "Not yet." The two guards spoke in low voices, their laughter cruel. "She won't last long," one said. "Maybe we should finish it tonight. Save the trouble." The other chuckled. "No, the boss said to keep her alive, says she's worth something. Though I don't know why anyone would want this weak thing." Daniel's fists curled. Every word was like poison. They talked about her life as if it was worthless, as if suffering was entertainment. Lyra covered her mouth, muffling a sob. Her eyes begged Daniel to act, but he had no weapon, no armor, nothing but his mind, his tools, and his will. He reached into his satchel quietly, feeling the weight of a small plasma torch. It wasn't a weapon, but it could cut through metal. Maybe even the cage if he got close enough. But first the guards, he whispered to Lyra, "Stay here. Don't move until I tell you." The girl nodded, though her small body shook with fear. Daniel moved slowly, crouching from shadow to shadow, his boots silent on the dusty floor. The guards were distracted, laughing, their backs half turned. Daniel picked up a loose bolt from the ground and tossed it across the room. It clattered loudly against the far wall. The sound made the guards whip around, weapons raised. "Who's there?" one barked, stepping toward the noise. The second followed, scanning the dark corners. Their eyes glowed faintly. Reptilian and sharp, Daniel held his breath, pressing against the crate for a moment. The only sound was the crackle of the fire and the guards' heavy footsteps. Lyra's tiny gasp threatened to give them away. Daniel quickly put a finger to his lips, signaling silence. The child buried her face against her knees. Trembling, one guard muttered, "Just rats." "Nothing more," the other snarled. "Rats don't throw bolts." Suspicion lingered. But slowly they turned back toward the fire. The danger passed, for now. Daniel exhaled softly, but he knew he couldn't keep distracting them forever. He needed to get to the cage, free the mother, and escape before reinforcements came. But how? Then he saw it, a chain hoist hanging from the ceiling, its rusted hook dangling just above the guards' heads. An idea sparked, risky but possible. He could drop it, stun them long enough to reach the cage. Quietly, Daniel slipped along the side wall, climbing up an old ladder that creaked under his weight. The guards muttered below, completely unaware from above. He positioned himself over the hoist, his hand gripping the release lever. His eyes met Lyra's. She looked terrified, but when he nodded, she gave a tiny nod back, trust pure and fragile. But strong. Daniel took a deep breath. "Here goes nothing," he whispered to himself. With a sharp pull, he yanked the lever. The heavy chain dropped with a thunderous crash, striking the ground between the guards. Sparks flew, the sound echoing through the warehouse. The guards shouted in alarm, stumbling back, weapons drawn. They were distracted, their eyes off the cage. Off Lyra. This was the moment Daniel leaped down from the platform. Landing hard but steady, he rushed toward the cage, pulling out his plasma torch. The mother's eyes fluttered open weakly, confusion and hope mixing in her gaze as she saw the human kneeling at her prison. "Hold on," Daniel said, his voice steady. "I'm getting you out of here." The torch hissed as its blue flame lit the bars. Metal glowed red, sparks flying as the lock began to weaken. Behind him, the guards roared, "Human! Stop!" Lyra cried out. "Please hurry!" The sound of boots thundered closer, the firelight flickering across weapons raised. Daniel gritted his teeth, sparks showering his hands as he cut deeper. Every second felt like a lifetime. The lock was almost ready to break, but so was the patience of the guards charging toward him. The warehouse was filled with heat, shadows, and danger, and Daniel knew the real fight had just begun. The torch hissed louder, sparks bursting as Daniel forced it against the cage lock. The glowing metal bent under the heat. The alien mother lifted her weak head, her voice barely a whisper. Who are you?" Daniel didn't answer, his jaw tight, every muscle focused on cutting through the lock. Behind him, heavy footsteps closed in. The guards shouted, their voices sharp with rage. "Human filth!" "Step away." Daniel's heart pounded, but he kept his focus. The lock gave a groan, glowing brighter, almost ready to snap. Then, a hand grabbed his shoulder, claws digging in. He spun around instinctively, swinging the torch like a weapon. The flame licked across the guard's arm, and the alien howled in pain, stumbling back. The second guard lunged with a shock baton, crackling with blue energy. Daniel ducked, the strike missing his head by inches. The baton smashed into the bars of the cage, sending sparks raining down inside. The alien mother flinched, pressing herself against the corner. Fear in her fading eyes, Daniel kicked forward, his boot slamming into the guard's chest. The alien staggered but didn't fall. They were stronger, bigger, built for war. Daniel wasn't. But he had something else, desperation and a stubborn will to protect. The first guard recovered, snarling, his burnt arm still smoking. "You should have walked away, human." He spat. Daniel's eyes flicked to Lyra. The little girl was crouched behind the crate, tears on her cheeks, but she refused to run. She whispered something, words Daniel could barely hear. "Please save her." That whisper gave him fire. He couldn't stop now. The guards circled him, weapons raised, their eyes gleaming with cruel delight. They were trained fighters. He was just a mechanic, but he remembered long nights fixing ships under pressure, moments where one mistake meant death. That same focus burned in him now. He raised the torch like a blade, his other hand gripping a loose pipe from the ground. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make the guards pause. One hissed, "You think you can fight us? You're nothing, human." Daniel growled back, "Maybe. But I'm enough for you." The guard roared and charged. Baton swinging, Daniel blocked with the pipe, the shock surging through his arm. Pain burning his nerves, he gritted his teeth, forcing the baton aside and slammed the torch forward. The flame grazed the guard's face, forcing him to recoil with a scream. The second guard lunged, claws slashing. Daniel ducked low, rolling across the floor, grabbing a broken chain as he moved. He whipped it around the alien's legs, yanking hard. The guard stumbled, crashing to the floor with a heavy thud. For a moment, Daniel had space. He turned back to the cage, slamming the torch against the weakened lock. It sparked violently, the metal glowing orange. Before cracking, the lock snapped, falling to the ground with a sharp clang. The cage door creaked open. The alien mother blinked in disbelief, tears filling her tired eyes. You freed me," she whispered, her voice trembling with both hope and fear. Daniel reached out, steadying her as she stumbled forward. Her chains clattering. "Stay with me," he said firmly. But there was no time to celebrate. The first guard, his face burned, roared with fury. Charging like a beast, Daniel shoved the mother behind him. Raising the pipe again, the guard's baton cracked against the metal. Sparks flying. The force rattled his bones. His arm screaming in pain, but he refused to let go. "Go!" Daniel shouted to Lyra and her mother. "Run!" The child hesitated, tears streaking down her dusty face. "I can't leave you," she cried. Daniel forced a grim smile. "You're not leaving me, you're keeping her safe. Now go." The alien mother leaned on her daughter, her weak body trembling. Together they stumbled toward the exit, but the second guard rose from the floor, Blocking their way, his claws flashing, his voice hissed. No one escapes. Daniel's eyes widened. If they were caught now, it was over. He swung the chain he still held, whipping it toward the guard's arm. The chain wrapped tight, and with all his strength, Daniel yanked him off balance. The alien staggered, giving Lyra and her mother a chance to slip past. The warehouse was chaos, fire crackling, chains rattling, guards roaring. Daniel's lungs burned. His arms ached, but inside him, something fierce kept pushing, not just survival, justice. No one deserved to rot in a cage, not while he was still breathing. The guards regrouped, circling him again, their eyes burning with hatred. "You'll die for this," human one spat, his teeth sharp in the firelight. Daniel wiped sweat and blood from his brow, raising the torch once more. "Maybe," he said, his voice steady. "But not before I take you with me." The standoff froze for a breath, tension thick like a storm ready to break. The sound of distant footsteps echoed, heavier this time. More guards were coming. Daniel's stomach tightened. He was outnumbered, but he couldn't give up. Lyra and her mother needed time, and he would give it no matter the cost. The alien mother looked back at him from the door, her voice breaking. Why are you helping us?" Daniel locked eyes with her, his answer simple. "Because no one else will." The guards lunged, and the fight began again, fiercer than before. Daniel swung, blocked and burned, his body pushed to its limit. Each second felt like an eternity, each strike like thunder in the dark. And as the battle raged, Lyra pulled her mother outside, whispering, "He'll save us. He has to." But deep inside, fear grew. Would the human survive against so many, or would this warehouse become his grave? The warehouse shook with the sound of battle. Chains rattling, firelight flickering across rusted walls. Daniel's arms ached, every strike of the pipe sending shocks through his bones. The plasma torch hissed in his other hand, its flame spitting sparks as it clashed against alien weapons. The guards pressed closer, fury burning in their reptilian eyes. Outside the door, Lyra and her mother stumbled into the alley, the night air biting cold against their skin. The mother leaned heavily on her daughter, her weak legs barely able to hold her weight. But her eyes kept turning back to the door, fear gnawing at her heart. Inside, the human was still fighting, still risking everything. For them, strangers he had never met before. Inside, Daniel gritted his teeth, his body screamed for rest. But his mind refused to surrender. The guards circled him, snarling like predators. "You should have walked away," human one hissed, his burnt arm twitching from earlier wounds. "No one crosses us and lives." Daniel's breath came heavy, but his voice was steady. "Maybe, but I won't let you keep her locked like an animal." The words hung in the air, sharp as a blade, the guards' expressions twisted with hatred. Their claws flashing in the firelight, they lunged together, two shadows of fury. Daniel blocked one with the pipe, the impact nearly shattering his arm. The other slashed across his side, pain searing through him. He staggered, his torch flickering dangerously low. For a moment, Daniel's vision blurred, the edges of the world spinning. He thought of giving up, of collapsing right there. But then, Lyra's tearful face flashed in his mind, her small voice echoing, "Oh, please, human, help us." That memory snapped his focus back. He could not quit. Not while they were depending on him. Not while injustice stood in front of him. He growled, swinging the pipe in a wide arc. Catching one guard across the jaw, the alien stumbled, spitting blood, but the other slammed him back against the cage. Iron bars dug into his spine, his torch slipping from his hand. It clattered to the ground, its flame dying with a hiss. Daniel gasped, his weapon gone, the pipe nearly knocked from his grip. The guards grinned, sensing victory. "Now you die," one growled, raising the baton for the final strike. And in that instant, Daniel faced the choice. He could drop the pipe, raise his hands, beg for mercy. The guards might spare him, if he left the mother and child behind. He could walk away, survive, go back to his quiet life as a mechanic, safe but guilty forever, or he could stand. Even if it meant his death, he could fight, not for himself, but for them, for the weak, the forgotten, the ones no one else would save. Daniel closed his eyes for half a second, the memory of his mother's voice returning once more. Never turn away from the helpless. When he opened his eyes again, fire burned inside them. He raised the pipe, blood dripping from his lip. "If I die," he growled, "then I'll die standing." With a roar, he swung the pipe upward, catching the guard's baton mid-swing. The crack of metal on metal echoed, the shockwave sending sparks across the floor. The guard's eyes widened in surprise. Daniel twisted, forcing the baton aside, then slammed his forehead into the alien's face. Bone cracked and the guard reeled back, dazed. The second lunged. Claws ready to tear, Daniel rolled aside. Grabbing the fallen torch, its flame sputtered weakly, but enough to burn. He thrust it upward, catching the alien across the chest. The guard screamed, stumbling backward, the smell of scorched armor filling the air. For a brief moment, both guards were down. Struggling to recover, Daniel staggered toward the door. Clutching his bleeding side, he knew he couldn't finish this fight here. More were coming. He had heard their heavy boots in the distance. He had bought seconds, maybe a minute, but not more. Lyra's small face appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide with fear. "Human, please," she cried, holding out her hand. Daniel stumbled toward her, his vision swimming, but he forced himself forward. Outside, the mother's weak voice whispered, "Why? Why risk your life for us?" Daniel met her gaze, his answer simple, raw, "Because no one else will." He stepped into the night, the cold air slapping his burning skin. Behind them, the warehouse shook with movement. More guards pouring in. Their shouts echoed into the darkness. The hunt had begun. Daniel knew what came next. There was no turning back, no safe path now. He had chosen to fight, to protect, to stand against cruelty. And as the three of them disappeared into the dark alleys, the stars above hidden by smoke and neon lights, Daniel's fate was sealed. He was no longer just a mechanic, he was their shield, their last hope. But deep inside, a question gnawed at him. How far was he willing to go to protect them? And could one human really stand against the power of an entire alien faction? The answer waited in the shadows, and the night was only just beginning. The night swallowed them as Daniel, Lyra, and her mother hurried through the maze of narrow alleys. The city around them was alive with neon signs, glowing wires, and the distant hum of alien engines. But in these back streets, the shadows were deep and the silence heavy. Every echo of boots behind them made Daniel's heart pound harder. He clutched his side where the guard's claws had torn through his shirt. Blood soaking the fabric, each step was pain. But he forced himself forward. Lyra supported her mother, the child's small frame carrying more weight than it should have. The alien woman staggered, her chains still dangling from her wrists. Her breath shallow. "We can't outrun them," she whispered, her voice weak but certain. "They will keep coming." "They always do." Daniel looked back. Shadows moved at the far end of the alley, glowing eyes searching, weapons glinting in the light. The guards were spreading out, hunting them like prey. He gritted his teeth. No, they wouldn't stop, not unless he gave them a reason to. "Lyra," Daniel said quickly, his voice sharp but calm. "Take your mother and keep moving. Follow the lights until you reach the old docks. Hide there." The girl's eyes widened in panic. "But what about you?" Daniel forced a thin smile, though his chest burned with fear. "I'll slow them down. I'll find you later." "No," Lyra cried, clutching his arm. "You can't fight them all." Her desperation cut deep, but Daniel knew there was no choice. He couldn't let them be caught, not after all this. He placed a rough hand on her shoulder, steadying her trembling body. "Listen, kid. If they catch me, that's one life. If they catch you and your mother, that's two. You keep her safe, understand?" Lyra's golden eyes filled with tears, but she nodded slowly, her small hands shaking. She turned to her mother, who whispered weakly, "He is right. We must trust him." The words were painful, but true. Lyra hugged Daniel quickly, her small arms fierce around him. "Promise you'll come back," she whispered. Daniel didn't lie. He only said, "I'll try." Then he pushed them onward, watching until their shadows disappeared into the twisting streets. Alone now, Daniel turned back toward the hunters. The pain in his body was nothing compared to the fire in his heart. The first guard appeared, his face still burned from the torch. His voice was full of venom. "Human, you should have stayed out of this." Daniel raised the pipe he still carried, his stance steady. "Yeah, maybe, but now it's too late." The guard snarled and rushed forward, baton crackling. Daniel dodged narrowly, sparks flashing as the weapon scraped the wall. He swung the pipe upward, slamming it into the alien's jaw with a crack. The guard staggered back, hissing in pain. But another appeared from behind. Claws ready to strike, Daniel spun, blocking with the pipe. But the force drove him to his knees. The claws raked his shoulder, blood spraying. He roared, slamming the pipe into the alien's stomach. The alien grunted but didn't fall. They were stronger. He knew that. But he had something they didn't. desperation and the will to protect. He remembered fixing ships back on Earth sometimes. A small trick could stop a massive engine, and sometimes the weakest part of a machine brought down the whole thing. Daniel dropped low, sweeping the pipe at the alien's legs. The guard fell with a heavy crash, dust filling the air before the alien could rise. Daniel grabbed the dangling chain from the ground and wrapped it tight around the guard's throat. The alien struggled, thrashing, but Daniel held on. His teeth clenched. Finally, the guard went limp, collapsing against the cold floor. But there was no time to breathe. The others were coming, their shouts echoing through the alleys. Daniel staggered to his feet, his lungs burning. He had slowed them, but more shadows closed in from every side. The struggle was endless. Strike, block, bleed, stumble, rise again. Every fight left him weaker, but he refused to stop. For every blow he took, he thought of Lyra's voice, "Please, human, help us." At last, he ducked into a narrow passage, his body collapsing against a wall. He gasped, blood dripping onto the dirt, his vision blurred, but he forced his eyes open. He had to survive. He had promised the child. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Daniel gripped the pipe tighter, his hands slick with sweat and blood. If this was the end, he would face it on his feet. The guards rounded the corner. Their weapons raised, Daniel's heart thundered. The struggle wasn't just for survival anymore, it was for something greater. For the innocent, for the helpless, for the child who believed in him. And as he raised his weapon once more, his body shaking but his will unbroken, he whispered to himself, "I won't let them win. Not while I'm still breathing." Daniel leaned against the cold wall, blood dripping from his shoulder. His chest rose and fell in sharp bursts, every breath stabbing like fire. The sound of heavy boots echoed closer, the hunters closing in. He had fought so many already, yet more came, like a tide that would never stop. He looked at the pipe in his hand, bent, blood-stained. The weight of it felt heavier now. His body screamed at him to give up, to collapse, but his mind refused. If he stopped, Lyra and her mother would be taken again, and everything he had done would mean nothing. The memory of Lyra's tiny hands clutching his sleeve replayed in his mind, her trembling voice begging, "Please, human, help us." That voice pulled him back to his feet. He tightened his grip on the pipe, his eyes burning with stubborn fire. From the shadows, 3 guards stepped forward. Their eyes glowed in the dim neon light. Weapons buzzing with deadly energy, the leader sneered. "You should have stayed a mechanic. Human, now you'll die in the dirt." Daniel forced a smirk, though his lips bled. "Maybe, but not before I take some of you with me." The guards lunged. Daniel swung the pipe wide, blocking the first strike. Sparks flying as metal clashed. Pain ripped through his arms, but he pushed back. The second guard charged, claws slicing across Daniel's chest, tearing his shirt and flesh. He staggered, nearly falling, but rage gave him strength. He rammed his elbow into the alien's jaw, sending him stumbling. The third guard came from behind. Daniel spun, swinging the bent pipe like a hammer. It cracked across the alien's skull, the sound echoing through the alley. The alien fell to the ground, groaning but still alive. Daniel's lungs burned, his vision blurred with sweat and blood. Every movement felt like lifting a mountain, but he kept fighting, because giving up meant seeing that child's face twisted in despair. One of the guards snarled, charging again. Daniel ducked, his body moving slower now. The claw scraped across his back, hot pain flaring. He grunted, stumbling forward, his knees buckled, but he slammed the pipe into the alien's ribs before falling. The guard gasped, wind knocked from him. Daniel collapsed to one knee, his hand pressing his bleeding side. He could barely stand. The guards surrounded him now, their laughter cruel. "You can't win. Human, you're nothing." He looked up at them, his vision swimming, and then he saw it. The broken chain dangling nearby, still attached to a rusted support beam. An idea flickered in his tired mind. One last gamble. With a roar, Daniel pushed to his feet and grabbed the chain. He swung it in a wide arc, sparks flying as it clashed against the ground and walls. The guard stepped back for a moment. Startled, that was all he needed. He swung again, wrapping the chain around one guard's arm. With a fierce yank, he pulled the alien off balance. The guard crashed to the ground, Daniel slamming the pipe down onto his chest with all his weight. The other 2 guards snarled, rushing at him together. Daniel's body screamed, but he refused to fall. He swung wildly, blocking, striking, forcing them back inch by inch. It wasn't skill now, it was pure willpower. Raw survival. Finally, the pipe snapped in half, shattering under the pressure. Daniel froze, holding only a broken piece. The guards grinned, moving in for the kill. But before they could strike, a sudden sound cut through the night. A faint voice, weak but clear, human. Daniel turned his head. It was the alien mother standing at the edge of the alley with Lyra. Her chain still dragged against the ground, her body trembling, but her eyes, once dull and hopeless, now glowed with determination. She raised her hands, chanting in a strange alien tongue. Symbols glowed faintly on her skin. Like fire waking from deep sleep, the guards hesitated, their eyes wide. You were supposed to be powerless. One shouted, but the glow spread, a force pushing them back slightly. The mother's voice grew stronger, the chains around her wrists heating. Snapping one by one, Daniel blinked in shock. Barely able to stand, he didn't understand what he was seeing. But he knew one thing, she was no ordinary prisoner. She had power, hidden, dangerous, and now it was waking. The guards roared, rushing at her to silence her, but Daniel stepped in their path, raising the broken pipe, his voice raw but unshaken. You'll have to go through me first. The guards struck, claws ripping, weapons flashing. Daniel blocked, parried, every movement slower than before. Blood poured, his body ready to collapse. But he didn't step aside, not once behind him. The alien mother's chant grew louder. The glow burst brighter like fire-breaking chains. Her eyes snapped open fully. Glowing with fierce light, the last chain shattered. Clanging onto the stone floor, she stepped forward. Weak but free, the guards froze. Their eyes filled with sudden fear. Daniel collapsed to one knee, gasping, his vision fading, but he smiled faintly, whispering, "You're free. Now finish it." The mother raised her hand, power surging through her veins. The guards snarled, rushing again, and in that instant, Daniel realized the fight was no longer just his. He had broken the cage. Now she would break the chains of fear. The alley glowed with strange light as the alien mother stood tall, her eyes burning like molten gold. For the first time in days, maybe years. Her back was straight, her voice strong. Chains lay shattered around her feet, smoke rising from the broken links. The guards froze mid-step, their sneers turning into wide-eyed fear. Daniel collapsed to one knee, his body trembling. Blood dripping from his wounds, but he refused to fall completely. His broken pipe still raised. He stared at the mother, his voice ragged. "You're free now. Don't waste it." The guards roared, trying to cover their fear with rage. "Kill them all! The boss will not forgive failure." They rushed forward, claws and weapons raised. But the mother raised her hand, glowing symbols spreading across her skin like fire etched into her veins. She spoke words Daniel couldn't understand, ancient and sharp, and suddenly, the air itself shifted, heavy with unseen force. The first guard flew backward, slammed against the wall as if struck by invisible chains. The second dropped his weapon, clutching his head as light seared his eyes. The third tried to lunge at her, but his body froze mid-air, locked in place by her power. His scream turned into silence as he collapsed. Unconscious, Lyra gasped, clutching her mother's arm. You still have your gift." The mother's eyes softened for a moment, sadness and strength mixing in her gaze. "They thought they could chain me forever, but their cruelty only made me stronger," Daniel coughed. Pressing his side, his vision swam, the world spinning, but he forced himself to stay awake. He couldn't let go now, not when they had finally broken free. More footsteps echoed at the far end of the alley. Dozens of guards now, reinforcements marching closer. The mother's glow flickered, her body still weak despite the burst of power. She couldn't fight them all, not in her condition. Daniel forced himself to his feet, swaying but unbroken. "We can't stay here. Move," he barked. His voice snapped them back into motion. Together, they stumbled through the winding alleys, the glow of the mother's power lighting the way. Behind them, the hunters shouted, their boots shaking the ground. But Daniel knew the city better than most outsiders. He had walked these alleys for years, scavenging, trading, surviving. Now, that knowledge was their only chance. He led them through hidden paths, past rusted stairwells and broken neon signs. Every corner brought danger, but also hope. They reached the edge of the old docks where abandoned ships rested like skeletons of forgotten dreams. The air smelled of salt and metal, the sea below crashing against steel beams. Lyra's small hand gripped Daniel's tightly. Her eyes glowed with hope. Even as fear trembled inside her. "You saved us," she whispered. Daniel shook his head faintly, his voice low. "Not yet. We're not safe until we're gone." The mother leaned against a broken container, her breath heavy, her chains gone but her body still frail from days of hunger and torture. She looked at Daniel with tired but grateful eyes. "You risked everything for us. Why?" Daniel wiped blood from his face, his words simple. "Because no one else would." Her lips trembled as if no one had spoken such words to her in years. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You are more than human." Before Daniel could answer, shouts erupted again. The guards had found them, their glowing eyes piercing the shadows. They spread across the dock like wolves closing in, weapons raised, their leader stepping forward. A tall alien in dark armor, his voice sharp as steel. "You should have stayed out of this, human. Now you'll die with them." Daniel raised his broken pipe, his stance shaky but unyielding. He knew he had almost nothing left to give. But he also knew this. He would not step aside. Not for them, not ever. The mother stepped beside him, her glow flickering but still alive. Together they faced the line of hunters. Lyra stood between them, clutching both their hands, her voice small but steady. "We're not afraid anymore." The guards rushed forward. But something unexpected happened. From the shadows of the dock, more figures emerged, aliens from the marketplace, the ones who had turned away earlier. Merchants, workers, even beggars, faces filled with shame and anger. They had followed, watching the human stand against cruelty. And now inspired, they stepped forward too, armed with pipes, tools, and sheer courage. One shouted, "No more cages!" Another cried, "We stand with them!" The hunters hesitated, their numbers strong but their certainty shaken. This wasn't just a human and a weak alien woman anymore. It was a spark turning into fire, a rebellion waking in the streets. Daniel's chest swelled with pain and pride. For once, he wasn't fighting alone. He whispered to himself, "Maybe, just maybe we can win this." The hunters clashed with the crowd, the dock erupting into chaos. Daniel fought with the last of his strength, standing shoulder to shoulder with strangers who had once looked away. The mother unleashed bursts of power when she could, her chains truly broken now. And through it all, Lyra's voice rang out, a child's cry of hope louder than any battle. When the fight finally ended, the hunters fled, broken and scattered. The dock was silent except for heavy breathing and the distant crash of waves. Daniel collapsed to his knees. Exhaustion finally dragging him down, Lyra ran to him, hugging him tightly. "You did it. You saved us," she whispered. The mother knelt beside him, her glowing eyes soft now. "No," she said gently. "You saved more than us. You saved all of them." Daniel looked up, seeing the crowd of aliens around him, faces that once turned away, now filled with respect and gratitude for the first time. He understood. A single act of kindness, a single refusal to look away, could change everything. He closed his eyes, smiling faintly despite the pain. Then it was worth it. And in that moment, under the broken lights of the dock, the human mechanic who came for spare parts had become something greater, a symbol of hope, a shield for the weak, a reminder that even in the darkest places humanity could shine.